everybody. Welcome to the stream tonight. I hope you're having a good evening or a good day, wherever you are, whenever you are. I'm Luke Miller. I'm a game developer. I play games and I make games and I sometimes stream games. But tonight I have a very special episode of whatever the hell you call this thing because I'm playing my own game, Liberation. Um, yeah, so I'm really excited to be here. If you are watching this on Twitch, leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, write something below. If you're watching this on Steam, I don't know, contact me somehow. I don't know how you would though. But yeah, like, how amazing is that? I thought we'd do something a little bit different tonight. Because I'm a bit shy, I'm a little bit shy about my own game. So I'm not just going to be playing it, I'm just going to be talking mostly about like the stuff that I like and the things that like really, really got me excited to make this game. Um, I don't really have a plan other than that, so I'm a little bit loose tonight. What's the best thing to start off with? I should introduce the game. Wait a minute, it's up here. Oh, Liberation. So it's a retro space adventure, and it's kind of like a mashup of two sort of main things to me. This game from the 1980s called Elite, and science fiction, especially like TV science fiction from like the around the same time that Elite was made. But there's like all sorts of asterisks on that. So when we talk about Elite, you may be familiar with the Elite series. So Elite Dangerous, one of the best games of the last decade or whatever. But actually, all the Elite games are really like top of the class, and just have completely like blown open what games can be. Like the first Elite was on like a tiny little disc, but it was like hundreds of planets, dozens of spaceships. It was like a living, breathing galaxy. And each planet had its own little story and everything, and it was just really quite an amazing thing, especially for me as a kid. I used to sort of get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning because so I could use the computer by myself, and you're just sort of flying around in the dark. It was really an amazing experience. And then I don't know, like 10 years later, Elite Two came out, Frontier, and it was like even bigger and like better. And they like not just a galaxy of hundreds of planets, but like our galaxy with like millions of planets, including like the Earth. And some things you couldn't do in the first Elite, like actually go down to planets, you could do in Elite Two. Um, but weirdly, I didn't love Elite Two. Like it was too real for me. It was kind of like there's Newtonian physics, so you sort of had to fly, and if you want to change direction, you had to kind of like apply reverse thrust. It was a very, very serious game in a way. Like I think like too serious. So it's like they took everything that people loved about Elite, and they did it more, but it was like I didn't love it as much. And then Elite Three and Elite Dangerous, which is amazing too. So I guess like since that time, I've always wanted to make my own version of Elite. Sort of like if Elite was like a little less real. So that's Liberation. And then the other thing that it's based on is like during COVID, I got into a lot of like old videotape sci-fi from Britain. I call it videotape because it was filmed on videotape, not film. So like shows like old Doctor Who, like Tom Baker, Blake Seven, Star Cops, just all this stuff that was coming out of like the UK in like the 70s and 80s that's kind of a bit dodgy, but is also like really brilliant. Like it just kind of like I'm not going to say great writing, but some of it is great writing, and I'm not going to say it's all great acting, but some of it is great acting. It's like they've just got like theater people and put them in a little studio with like three cameras pointed at them, and they've just like delivered. Especially Blake Seven, which is like if you're a Doctor Who fan, every so often growing up, you would hear of this show called Blake Seven. Like some of the actors and some of the writers and some of the directors from Doctor Who would also have worked on the show called Blake Seven, but I never really knew about it. But then during COVID, I tracked it down and I watched it, and it was like so good. It was kind of like an adult version of Doctor Who, and that's as good and as bad as you can possibly like as you would imagine, right? So like the special effects are just as bad, and like the science is a bit hokey. Like they have this ship called Liberator, and it's never quite clear how fast it can go. Like some episodes, it can't like get away from a planet to another to a moon or whatever. But then in other episodes, it can like cross to the other side of the galaxy, or maybe even into other galaxies. It's never quite clear. They're a bit nebulous. Like for science fiction, you'd think that's like hardcore basic stuff that you get right. But like all good science fiction, they don't really get it right very often. Yeah. Blake Seven a lot darker. So it's created by the fellow that created the Daleks, or wrote the first Dalek story, Terry Nation, who I never really knew much about. But then, kind of going on this voyage of making Liberation, I've gone down all these rabbit holes. This is what the stream is going to be about, right, people? Basically, every time in the game I come across something that I got from like another science fiction show, I'm going to like just talk about the show and do my own garbled like memory of that show. So like I haven't done any research. So you're going to get the history of British science fiction as told by an Australian guy who only half remembers it. So yeah, so Terry Nation wrote Blake Seven, the first season. He had like a fight and then he left or whatever. But it's really dark, especially the first episode. It's kind of like Brave New World meets 1984. There's this guy who's been brainwashed called Blake, and he used to be a political leader, and everybody loved him. But then he got like fake crimed, and it's a pretty serious crime that he gets like fake crimed for. And he gets brainwashed, and he becomes a good citizen and everything. But anyway, they contact him. The rebels contact him, and they try and like convert him back. But he's all reluctant and everything. And anyway, all of them get massacred, and he kind of gets framed for it again. And so they put him on a prison ship with a bunch of other prisoners, and they're heading to a distant colony, like Botany Bay, I don't know. All I do remember is the ship is called the London. So he's on the London with these other prisoners, and like a rebellion breaks out. The prisons stage a prisoner break. Like he's not really involved, but they take like the guards hostage and everything. Anyway, so it's all coming to a head, and he's actually playing the peacemaker because he's actually a really good guy, this Blake. And he meets some of the other prisoners, like the serial killer who's been chipped, or the super violent guy that's been chipped, or like the terrorist woman who's like in shackles and everything. And they're all about to die, and it's all really horrible. And then they just find the ship floating in space, which has just come out of a battle, like an unseen battle, basically sort of a battle of the gods. And this ship just comes flying out of it, and it's Liberator. So it's this alien ship, and Blake and a few of the prisoners get on it and escape. And that's kind of the premise of the show. Blake and seven or six, it's never quite clear who the Blake Seven are because it kind of changes a bit. That's another great thing about Blake Seven. Oof. If anyone's still watching the stream by now, you really are in it for the long haul. But anyway, you've got to go where the heart wants you to go. So we're going Blake Seven at the moment. Where were we? So yeah, they're just flying around on the Liberator, and it's the ship that's the best ship in the whole kind of like evil Federation, and they're being hunted down, but also they're like fighting against the Federation. And then there's ups and downs and twists, and people die and people come and go, and it's got a really lovely sort of early 80s sci-fi vibe that I really admire. And it kind of got me thinking that Elite was made in Britain in the early 80s, and Blake Seven was made in Britain in the early 80s. There's sort of a cross-pollination at that time, and I've never really seen it kind of mashed together. Yeah, so I was just kind of like, why don't I make the Elite of my dreams the silly Elite of my dreams, and also mash it up with like all the stuff that was around at the time, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Doctor Who and Star Cops and everything. And that's what got Liberation. So I guess let's look at it. This is your lovely ship, the Z11. As you can see, it's sleek, it's state of the art. This is all being rendered in high definition HD, but I've kind of got that really cool low res look happening, which I'm really pleased about. It's very authentic. I mean, that's the thing about this game. Like, it's not a retro game in that it's only made using retro hardware and only made to the limits of the old PCs, or like the Commodore 64 or whatever, or the BBC Micro, or the Acorn, or the Amiga or whatever. It's reminiscent of that, and I think really authentically so, where it needs to be, but also where it's not important for it to be authentic. I've really just used modern stuff, so it's a very modern game engine, modern lighting, like lots of modern stuff happening under the hood, but it's like still, I think, authentically retro, because there's like a greater truth behind it, rather than just doing it like low res, low palette kind of thing. Because I guess it's partly like the Elite of my imagination. This is like when I played Elite, this is what it looked like to me But if you go back and play or look at the Old Elite now, it is like, you know, 8 polygons, and I think the one I had was CGA, so it was like 4 colors. But I've tried to keep like a pretty cool like 80s color palette too. I'm kind of afraid to go into the game because this is the first time I played it on stream. This code is really, really fresh. I haven't checked this code in. This is a pre-release version, so there may be bugs. So as you can tell, I'm a little bit nervous, but I really wanted to just get it out there and just have a bit of like, just take a moment to just play it and look at it and laugh at it, and because I've had a lot of fun making it. I'm a bit nervous. I've got my Space 1999 t-shirt on, which may come up later. It's another British show from the 70s. I'm on a real like UK sci-fi, kick at the moment. I do think they made the best science fiction in that era. I'm allowed to say that because I'm not British. All right, press any key to start. Classic. All right. So this is the prologue. Just a little kind of like visual storytelling. So you start off on a prison planet, and you've escaped at the very start. So here we have a couple of things. If you look in the top right corner, you can see the jump gates. So the way you travel throughout the galaxy in this game is through the jump gates system. They link to other planets. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Gelfed is short for Galactic Federation. They're the villains of the game. They're just really evil. Ooh, because one of the best scenes in Blake 7 happens in like, I don't know, episode 7 or 12 or whatever. And it's kind of a throwaway scene. It just shows, because you're kind of like, why is Blake 7 fighting this Federation? So many shows don't really explain it. They're just like, oh, these are the baddies, and we're against them because they're the baddies, but they don't show them being bad. But in Blake 7, there's this planet, and everyone on it is just a bit drugged out of their minds, like blissfully, and they're just going through like the shopping center, and they're all smiling and happy. And some of the Gelfed guards are like just shooting them as they come up the escalator, just for fun, because like the people don't react because their emotions are suppressed, and it's just so chilling and evil. And that's why like they're fighting the Federation. So I really wanted to kind of bring that into Gelfed. It is just really like all the worst things you can think of, like science fiction. Like it's just oppressive and authoritarian and anti-democracy and just kind of like cruel as well for no real reason. That's Gelfed, and they've dumped you on this prison colony, or penal colony, because it's a little joke, but also it's like a little kind of like convict humor, if you don't mind. And you'll never leave. Okay, so you'll never leave is a little reference, a little Easter egg to the League of Gentlemen, which was a British comedy show from about 20 years ago. Um, it's good. It's like these uni students, I think, were doing like their little stand-up routines around the country, and they got hired to make a show, and so they've got these comedy sketches that they wove into a show about this horrible little town, Royston Vasey. It's like a horror comedy, so it's kind of unique in that regard, and it's pretty well done. A couple of bits of it haven't dated very well. Papa Lazarus is like kind of about the horror of like the circus and minstrel shows and everything, but also it's like not like, it's a little bit out of date, I suppose. And also they have a taxi driver who is played for laughs, but probably is a bit like hasn't dated very well either. But the rest of the show is pretty good, I reckon. And the slogan for the town is "You'll never leave." So I just put a little Easter egg there. We're not playing the whole game. We're just kind of going to play it for like, I don't know, half an hour. And I'm just going to, whenever I come across a little Easter egg, I'm just going to stop and give you my garbled version of that show. Oh, well, there's our first bug. There's supposed to be a ship there, our beautiful Z11. Alright, but let's board it. We come across the ship stuck in the snow. Oh, how embarrassing. A little bug there. On the very first scene. I've got to make notes of these as we go through, or else I'm going to go insane. Z11 missing in first scene. This is what I mean about it being fresh code. Alright, so here we have the main, this is the main sort of I don't know what you call it, interface for the game. You're flying around in your ship with this beautiful HUD, heads-up display. Um, Now, something that Elite's really famous for is this sort of hologram thing, radar, that sort of shows the ships like a dot for each ship in 3D. And it's really common, like most space sims have it, but I kind of really wanted to not do it, just to see if I could do it without it. Because I really kind of am a believer in like immersion and just kind of like getting the user interface out of the way. So it's a really stripped back user interface. Like you're not in the cockpit of your ship, so it's kind of a little bit more like you are the ship. You know, you're the one flying through space, and I just think it gives a really nice kind of like immediacy and a bit of kind of like, I don't know, just a little bit more oomph. But having said that, how do we explain that? Okay, so you've got your shields, you've got your energy, and you've got your hull. That's on the right. In the middle, you've got your speed, you've got your little boost button, and on the left, you've got these systems. So you've got like configuration, like a little local radar to see what's local. You've got your galaxy map, you've got your communications, and you've got your weapons. So, well, your systems. So you've got a docking computer and a missiles in this one. Oh, but we're going to put on story mode. Gameplay, story mode. Yeah. Just because I can't really concentrate on flying and talking at the same time. But yeah, I'm really big on accessibility. Like I really believe that people don't have accessibility problems. Software has accessibility problems. And all my other games have been event driven, like turn based. But this one is a bit more of a twitchy game. But I've really tried to kind of cater for people with different abilities. So it is mouse and keyboard, but also controller support. It's got a story mode, and when story mode is on, the enemies they'll wreck your shields, but they won't harm your hull. So you can just fly around and have a good time. And you also have a special weapon called the Blast, which we'll show in a minute, I guess. And when you just press that, it destroys all the enemy ships. Because because some people they don't have the patience or the time or the ability to do dogfights. They just want to have a chill, fun time, and so that's what story mode is really great for. And it's certainly not the wrong way to play it. Like if you want story mode, that's what it's there for. It is literally there for you to play and enjoy, and you don't miss any of the game. You know what I mean? Yes, I have to pause the stream every so often because my computer is overheating tonight. It's not due to liberation. It's just I think it's due for a replacement, one of the parts. It's pretty frustrating. But yes, where were we? Oh, we're talking about the difficulty levels. Story mode, it's ace. There are 4 levels of difficulty. Harmless, mostly harmless, dangerous, and elite. Elite being the top level out of respect. Harmless and mostly harmless being a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. If you're unfamiliar with that series, it's about how Earth gets demolished and the only survivors are the person who was writing the encyclopedia entry on it and his human friend. And his human friend goes, "Well, what was the entry for Earth in your Galacticopedia?" And the writer's like a bit cagey about it, and he doesn't want to commit. He goes, "Well, it used to be harmless," and Ford is like, not Ford, Arthur, and Arthur's like, "Really? Is that all? Like the whole planet, like all the animals, all the history, all the humans? We were just one word in the encyclopedia." And he's like, "Well, it's a big galaxy, you know." But I've managed to get it upgraded. And I was like, "What does it say now?" And he goes, "Well, it says mostly harmless." And I was upset, but as Ford quite correctly points out, that's pretty good for a planet that doesn't exist anymore. But we'll play it. Well, when you've got super mode on, story mode on, you don't really need the difficulty levels. Yeah, you've got all the options, like all the regular options for controls and audio and video, and let's keep going. All right, so now, yeah, we're in our spaceship. As you can see, the planet's surface. There's a space dock, which you dock with. Some planets have them, some planets don't. But yeah, if you want to go anywhere, you want to go to the jump gates. So if we look at the galaxy, it's the galaxy map. The thing about Liberation, we're at Penryn, the first planet. The thing about Liberation is that I wanted to make just a small game that's a bit of fun, that gets in and then gets out. It's like all killer, no filler. So it's not thousands of planets, it's not hundreds of ships. You just have the Z11. That's your beautiful ship. It's a character in the game as well. And each planet is kind of unique. and valuable. We're coming up to our first villain, but I'll just blast them. Maybe I'm a little too good at this game, but basically, yeah. So we destroyed the first villain, the first guard ship, and now we're free to leave. But we get a message from one of the characters. So there's a bit of a plot to Liberation. Yeah, so it's a little bit directed. There are missions and a storyline, and there's no procedural generation because I kind of prefer a game without that, really. Oh, there you are, my lovely. So the crime boss is the first character you meet. No need to thank me for breaking you out. He says he helped break you out, but I don't know if that's entirely sure. I think he's just taking advantage of you. He suggests that you can join forces with him. Because one of the things I like about Blake 7 is you actually teaming up with bad guys, to the point where you question whether Blake sometimes is the bad guy or not. And so you'll meet up with different characters and they'll give you missions to forward the main story. Alright, let's go. We've accepted the mission. You've got a little mission thing at the top. As I said, trying to keep it clear. Now we've reached near to the jump gate. Let's go through it. We'll go to Chaldea. Jump space. Every good science fiction needs it, with a little bit of lightning in the distance. Alright, so here we are at Chaldea Station. Now, if you're a Doctor Who fan from Classic Who, you may be familiar with Robots of Death. I'm just going to story mode these people away. There we go. So story mode just lets you blast them so you can move on with your life. Here we are at Chaldea, which is, I guess, modelled a little bit on the Robots of Death, which is a Doctor Who serial from, I think, 1975, 1976. It's like a Dune-like planet where it's just full of like giant mining ships. So like Robots of Death is modelled on Dune and Agatha Christie. Is that making any sense? There's a lot of mashups going on. So we've got a desert planet that's got valuable minerals. You've got a city that's populated mostly by robot servants and some rich families that are running it and some crime lords. And so there's a spaceport if you wanted to visit it. There's some beautiful statues. And as you can see, these little ships taking off. So CSS is for civilian starship. So the CSS Koenig just left the city and is docked. But we don't want to go there. We want to go to the space station. Chaldea Station. Robots of Death, written by Chris Boucher, who was a writer who wrote a few Doctor Who's, pretty good ones. Like Robots of Death is a Stone Cold classic. I think he wrote Blake 7. I think he was the showrunner on Blake 7. So when he and Terry Nation had a falling out, he stayed behind, and it's basically Blake 7 is his show. Even though Terry Nation's name is on the box, Chris Boucher probably had more effect on it than anyone else. And you can kind of tell because he does this sort of really great sort of 80s grim dark sort of everybody dies kind of sci-fi. Like he has pretty good sci-fi nose, I think. It's quite hard sci-fi, his stuff. And after Blake 7 in the mid 80s, he did a show called Star Cops, which maybe we'll get to later, but Star Cops is like a diamond in the rough. Like it is kind of rough, but it is so far ahead of its time. Like if you like The Expanse, well, you won't like Star Cops, but if you like how hard science The Expanse is, I think you might like Star Cops, which I think is probably harder sci-fi than The Expanse. It is just so real in what they tried to do, like on a super limited budget. But wait, we're just going to dock. I'm going to save it. Oh, we got it. Okay, so we've docked. We're meeting with the boss, the crime boss. Introductions. Silt Masden at your service. Now, Silts and Masden are two characters called Lazarus, a really awesome BBC science fiction show from the late 90s by Dennis Potter. The two villains in that. And so here's a little Easter egg. I've combined the two. The council, yes. He's just saying the council's going to do something because the council are building up to something. As you play through the game, you realize that something is happening with the council. He asks you to work for him. Okay, so yep, he gives you 1,000 credits, which is pretty good. What do you call money in the future? I don't know, dollar pounds, dollaroos, credits. I think is universal. Yep, so you get a bounty for each ship you catch. Crippling blow. And he's saying, yep, so now we've got to pick up some evidence the council is evil. So we've got to go to the next mission. Excellent. But for that, we'll save the game. I'm just going to override. Yep. Enter. So this is the dock screen. So when you dock someplace, you can upgrade your ship and all that sort of stuff. Here is a little telecast, the Gelford Broadcasting Corporation. People who are familiar with early 80s sci-fi, this is a little bit of a Max Headroom background, so basically Blake 7 has set me off on this COVID track to find as much old sci-fi as I could, and Blake 7 is another one I had a pretty good go at. I think I watched about half the episodes. I don't think it's dated as well as Blake 7. That's a weird way of putting it, because it's so like a lot of people would look at Max Headroom as the 1980s icon, So to say it's dated is kind of unfair because it's so of its time. But I'm going to go there and say that yes, the iconography of Max Headroom is of its time and brilliant, but actually the show is a little bit dated, just kind of like in editing and storytelling. It's just not as kind of like together as like some of the dramas like Blake 7 or Star Cops. But we've got to finish our little. Oh wait, no, wait a minute. All the references are coming thick and fast, so we've got to get through them. So I mentioned Cold Lazarus. So there was a British playwright called Dennis Potter. This is an amazing story, and I didn't really know much about him. In fact, I kind of started at the end with Cold Lazarus and worked my way back. But he was like a television playwright. He specialized in TV. Back when it was like people doing theater or doing like movies. This is like 50s, 60s, 70s. He specialized in writing plays for television, which, as you can imagine, is can be unloved, but also if you nail it, he was like top shelf for that. And he had a few big hits like The Singing Detective and Pennies from Heaven, which once again I never really knew about. But then when he found out he was dying from cancer, he decided to write two final television plays, and he kind of tricked the BBC and I think Channel 4, which is the other channel in the UK. I don't quite know how it works. He tricked them both into funding each one, but he didn't really tell them that they were linked. But these two final teleplays of his are actually linked completely. So the first one is about a writer who finds out he has cancer and is writing his last play. But as the tumours get to him, it all mixes up, like all his characters start coming to life in his head and everything. Pretty standard end of life stuff, whatever. But then Cold Lazarus is where it gets really weird. It's a science fiction about these scientists who find the head of a writer, and they plug it into this is 400 years in the future, and they plug the head into their computers, and they can extract the memories up on the screen. But because his brain's decayed, all the memories are scrambled. But this is where it's really weird, right? It's the head of the writer from the other play who was dying from cancer. So, but that writer is based on him who in real life was dying from cancer. And so it's just like, it's the kind of brilliant end of life piece of art that so few artists ever get to execute. And he did it, Dennis Potter. It's really remarkable. And people don't seem to love Cold Lazarus, but I just think it is so brilliant. It's just so sharp and nothing like it, because he wasn't really a science fiction fan. He was a fan of like television plays. And so for someone who doesn't write science fiction to turn their eye to sci-fi, especially when they're on their way out, it just really is nothing quite like Cold Lazarus. And it's so poignant as well, because the people who are alive in that future, they're really kind of not living a really good life. In fact, one of the big there's a terrorist movement in that future called Reality or Nothing, where people are like, it's time to unplug, no virtual reality, no computers. And you just think he wrote that in the 90s? It's even more relevant today. So check out Cold Lazarus if you can find it. So back to Star Cops. Star Cops is a show about, in the near future, like 20, 30 years in the future, where there's just enough people in space that it's no longer just scientists and researchers and astronauts. It's getting to that point where it's regular people, and there's like a few crimes. And so Star Cops is about the first police person, the first cops in space. And it's just like right on, it's just so well balanced. This whole idea of like space tipping over from just being like a theoretical research place where everybody's professional to being a place where you live. and how that's just slowly, like, once you get a large group of humans, they actually need laws and they need regulations, and not just that, but they need politicians and they need police and they need like ambulance services and stuff. And so Star Cops is just sort of right on that epoch moment, and it's so well done. Because one of the things it does quite well, which I don't think, like, it's kind of awkward, and I so wish they'd had a second season or a reboot or something. Um, it's just almost as much about international politics as it is about the crimes, because it's like space is still kind of divvied up by nations. So you've got the American space station, you've got the Russian space station, and you've got this cop. Like, where's his jurisdiction? It's like, technically he's in charge, but if you don't let him on the space station, what can he do? He can't do anything. So like, of the 8 episodes they made or 10 episodes they made, I'd say 6 are really, really good, and four are kind of a bit dodgy. But for a first season with no money, it's really, really good, and the special effects are pretty good. Um, what else do they say about Star Cops? It tanked in the ratings massively, um, which is a real pity. Like, it's one of those things where I think it was ahead of its time. Chris Boucher, who wrote it, he said it was too sci-fi for detective show people. So people who liked Agatha Christie, they didn't like it was in space. And for the space people, it wasn't spacey enough. Like, there were no aliens and stuff. It was just kind of people in space. So I think he learned a lesson from that. And I think it's kind of like, even though the concept is brilliant, I can kind of see how that limits its audience a little bit. Um, the theme song is amazing, except it's completely wrong for the show. In Star Trek Enterprise, everybody hates the opening theme, but then they kind of learn to love it. It's been a long road getting from there to here. Everybody hates that, but also it's awesome. And same with Star Cops, except without the hate, because the theme song is awesome. But I think Chris Boucher hated it, from what I've heard, which is a real pity because it's really good. Except I think it took up half the budget or whatever, because it's by some famous singer. Let's see. Now I think we've done all the references. We've done Keldor City, we've done June, we've done Cold Lazarus, done Star Cops. We've done it all. Star Cops, by the way, I think they still make some Big Finish audios. So if you actually are interested in the Star Cops universe, they have made some new audio plays, which I've heard very, very good things about. Um, Keldor City also had a series of audio plays, which they're a bit harder to track down, but I hear they're excellent as well. Once again, it's like something I like about British science fiction is there's a real kind of like, there's a bit of an ecosystem around it. Like, people put out comic books, they put out annuals, they put out audio plays, they put out little home movies. I think it's really good and healthy. We don't really have that in Australia. Like, we don't really have science fiction that sort of inspires that kind of fandom. We've got Mad Max, I suppose, but that's kind of international more than Australian now. We've got The Girl from Tomorrow, we've got Clever, and that's really about it. It's pretty slim pickings. But let's move on to the doc screen. So we've done Mad Max. I'm glad you're happy, happy you're glad. So this character says stuff, but it's just kind of a bit of colour. So Relax is from the song. You'll see all sorts of references to old Doctor Who and stuff in there as a joke. Oh, and 1984, the book. So here you can upgrade your ship. So as you destroy other ships, you get experience points, which you can then spend on upgrades. At the moment, I just dump them all into energy. I probably shouldn't say that. I'm kind of thinking I'm going to have to rebalance the game after release, but that's okay. Here's the stats for your ship. Here's the things that you can buy or sell. And here's just your news feed. So you've got these little articles that sort of give you a bit of colour about where you are in the game, but also about the universe around you, the world around you. So yeah, this sort of details how you got your ship. New dictionary, that's a very 1984 reference. An ad for Clockwork Orange chocolate. That's a reference to A Clockwork Orange, which is actually a really tough film to watch. It's Stanley Kubrick, 1970s. I think he tried to have it banned in the UK because it was inspiring violence. It's an odd film to watch. It doesn't feel like science fiction to me. It just feels like 1970s England. Not to say that 1970s England was like the ultra-violent place portrayed in the film, but I'm just saying it doesn't look very sci-fi. It's just kind of like, you know, there's no laser guns or anything. It's just kind of people walking around. But it's. I reckon the second half of Clockwork Orange is much better than the first half. The first half is really dark. Anyway, so you've got various things you can buy. You can repair your hull. You can top up your missiles. You can buy a docking computer or sell it. You can buy a reactor booster, which boosts your energy. Or you can buy a hacking unit. We'll buy the hacking unit with the credits we got, because I know we'll need it later on. Alright, let's move on. Alright, well hello, we're back after another little drink break / computer crash. Like the whole computer crashes. And it's crashing now just when I play like Spotify or something. So I'm kind of a little bit alarmed. That's something else. But alright, here we are. We forgot to collect the encrypted package. Which if you as I said, I really, really wanted to fit in as many references as I possibly could. You can quite see it just tucking out from behind my picture. This is actually a little cheeky little Easter egg to Metal Mickey, which was a terrible sitcom about like a household living with a robot called Metal Mickey. But it was clearly just like a box with some tinsel on it. Like they did not try at all. But I remember as a kid finding it hilarious. Let's save. Let's save here, yeah. Launch. Alright. I'll wrap it up. Like as I said, I only wanted to do half an hour, and we've already done like an hour, and that's including the crashes. So we're doing really, really well. Just give a playthrough, and we're only like, I don't know, a quarter of the way through the plot. And that's, by skipping all the fights as well. So I reckon there's probably like 3 to 4 hours of playtime in it. Which, as I said, I don't want it to be a 100-hour epic. I just want to be in and out and just have a fun little game. Yeah, all meat, all killer, no filler. Doom de doom de dum. Doom de doom de dum. And maybe a sequel. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, that's the thing, right? I guess with indie games is maybe they lack a little bit of the polish you expect from bigger games, but your support means like the world to just people who are making these games and writing these novels and making that music. You know what I mean? Like we're one level up from buskers. So if you do like what you see, please let me know. Like I love all feedback, even the bad stuff. But I love the good stuff even more. And I just really want to talk science fiction with people. Like I want to talk Star Cops with somebody. Like I literally know nobody else who's ever heard of that show. And so I'm always like hanging out with my friends and I'm like grabbing them by the shoulders and going, let's talk about Star Cops or let's talk about Cold Lazarus. But no, they just want to talk about like, I don't know, normal things. I don't know what normal things are. Alright, endurance, here we go. This time we're going to catch you. Yep. Oh, whoop, that's a bit early. Oh, here we go. Whoop, slow down. There we go. Phew. Just made it. Okay, Quater Matter. Here we go. How'd you get past the blockade at Keneal? It's because we have a stealth ship called the Z11. It's the coolest ship in the galaxy. This data, it's what we've been waiting for. The citizens of Gelford must see this. Everyone is watching the Gelford games. If I can somehow get that message there, get that message out, take me there. I can pay you when I arrive. Alright, this is the only bit of backtracking in the whole game. And I'm not even upset about it. I'm going to save... Oh no, I'm going to save over this one, because we're at last one. Alright, let's launch. We've got to go back to Thantis. And it's pretty much the only time in the game where you go backwards to a planet you've already visited. Unless you want to. Because as I said, you can actually just fly around the game and just kind of enjoy it without having to do the mission. Let's go via... Oh, no, because, best foot forward. Let's go via Bellion. I think we can go that way. So we're here and we want to go to Thantis. So we can go via Bellion. which is Ian Bell but backwards. And Ian Bell is one of the creators of the original Elite. I heartily recommend looking into the history of the two people that made the original Elite, because they do not get along these days, from what I can tell. Like, there's been court cases, there's been, you know, blog entries they've had to take down. It's been really, since that hearty collaboration in like 1983. There's been no love lost with it. And if you look at the different paths they've gone, so one of them went down the path of like making Frontier Elite 2 and then went into mobile games for a little while, but then came back with a Kickstarter to make Elite Dangerous, and that's like $100 million game now. He's never left games. The other fellow, and I can never remember which one is which, he was a bit more of that kind of, I think, a bit more of a sort of a techno nerd. And after he'd done his sort of early 80s computering thing, he's just kind of stayed a little bit in that world. And he has a photography hobby. He goes to a lot of raves to take photos. I think he does a lot of LSD as well. I mean, I don't, as I said, you're getting the garbled version of the British science fiction from me tonight. So if any of that sounds wrong, I apologize. But yeah, so one of them has gone on to be a successful CEO of a billion-dollar company, and the other one paints fluoro paint on female models to photograph them while doing LSD. And I'll leave it up to you to decide which one of them has lived a better life after Elite. Another reason why I had to make Liberation, just to kind of forever cement my join to those two fellows. We just saw a pretty cool ship back then. I don't know what we're here for. We're here heading our way to Thantis. So we want to go to Morlock. There's the Morlock jump gate. Alright. Oh, okay, so there's one British science fiction that I was like, I'll never be able to fit in a reference to it. But I found a way. It's a television show called What on Earth. It's a kid's show. It's got no redeeming features. It's just a terrible show. Apologies to anybody that worked on it. But it's just terrible, terrible, terrible. It's about this kid alien who gets stuck on Earth. Classic, but also just boringly done. And it's called What on Earth. But I found a way. One of the ships is called the What on Earth. And I was like, I'm so pleased to get that in there. Now, What on Earth, early 90s show, written by Pip and Jane Baker. Now, Pip and Jane Baker, if you're a classic Doctor Who fan, that name might be familiar to you, because Pip and Jane Baker wrote for Doctor Who during its widely recognized nadir period, like its low point in Classic Who, which is about 1985. And, look at that ship. Glorious. So Pip and Jane Baker, they were friends with the producer, John Nathan Turner, and what's really great about Pip and Jane Baker is that they could write very quickly, and the thing with Doctor Who at that time, it was just disintegrating behind the scenes, right? Production-wise, and so the timelines for scripts were getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and so they didn't have many people who could do it. And so Pip and Jane were often called upon, often with like 2 days warning, to write a script for Doctor Who. And they would do it. They'd just churn it out. And so that's amazing. But then also some of the problems with that is that maybe on screen those scripts were never quite realized as well as they could have been. Because if the scripts, even the scripts are good, the production at the time was such a mess, and they were cramming it, and they were struggling so much that really they couldn't deliver any script particularly well. So they wrote Time in the Rani, which is widely considered the low point of Classic Who. But I watched it recently, and actually I really liked it. It's got this sort of cool, sort of like VHS vibe to it, and there's these things in it called bubble traps, where you run and you step on this trap and you get trapped in a bubble and you go spinning off. Oh, it looks so good, and it's completely terrifying. Right, here we are at Morlock, which is an HGL reference from H.G. Wells. Had to cram one in there anyway. And it's the junkyard for Gelfed. It's where they dump all their ships. So you can't quite tell, but there's like my favorite Easter egg in the whole game here. Well, the first half. The second half has got, especially the last little bit, it's got pretty much if you watch the video, the trailers, you'll see it. But like, this is kind of one of like the best secret little Easter eggs, because this is the Liberator from Blake 7, disassembled, sadly. Um, what's the name of the computer in Blake 7? Xeno? Xenon? Oh man, the Blake 7 fans aren't going to be happy with me. But anyway, yeah. It's all in pieces, all on the ground. There's that little bit at the end, which is a pity because the Liberator is actually a really beautiful ship. If you look at the model for it, the people that built it, the people that went to film it, really didn't like how sort of like 70s it looked. So what they did is they turned the model around and they filmed it that way going forwards. So if you actually look at the Liberator model, it kind of looks like a race car engine, but if you turn it around, it looks like a really kind of just terrible old science fiction ship. So they did a great idea turning it around. It looks so much better. Here is also some little, that's a little red dwarf kind of ship. Why are we here at Morlock? It's because we're traveling to Thantis. Okay, so we're going to go to... Actually, I know exactly where we're going to end today's stream, providing the computer doesn't crash again. We'll go to Thantis, and then we'll go to Etane. And then we'll wrap it up. Yep. A bit of Morlock. Yes. Yeah, there's a red dwarf reference in there, but... Alright, well, my computer has been crashing so bad. I really am really struggling. To the point where I'm a little bit disappointed, because I was like, tonight's the night to show off the game, and... Anyway, I said we finish at Etane, but here we are at Thantis. Let's see what we've got. We're going to pick up quite a matter. We skipped a bit where we actually do the race. I leave that for you folk to do. It's quite fun. In fact, it's the kind of thing where I might... Oh no. There we go. We've upset Gelfed, and now they're coming for us. But luckily, we have story mode, and so we're going to just get out of here. Tycho, where do we want? We want Etane. Oh man, I'm also getting a bit tired, I can tell. Focus, Luke. Alright, let's just blow everything up. Story mode. I've been a bit rattled, I must say, by having the computer crash so often. It's very disheartening, isn't it? But anyway, we'll figure it out. Let's go through the Etane jump gate to one of my favorite systems, and then we'll almost finish it up. We've got Quatermatter as our little traveling companion over here. There we go. Yep, that was close. It's war now. So yeah, you've really annoyed Gelfed, so now it's out in the open. It's no longer a secret rebellion. Oh, but look, there's a giant space station being constructed. Isn't that strange? Mining station. Alright, so this beautiful asteroid, formerly a planet that is now being destroyed, and it's being mined by all sorts of ships, but I wonder if you can tell where they're from. There's quite a few of them sprinkled around the place. Yes, I guess sort of to summarize, like the Elite thing, but also the British science fiction thing. And I just love the idea that like Red Dwarf and Blake 7 and Caldor City and Doctor Who and Star Cops, Space 1999, Cold Lazarus, that they're all in the same universe, and just how great that is. Because when you think about it, they're all written by the same sorts of people at the same time. They are all actually in the same universe thematically. Like Red Dwarf and Judge Dredd you can't tell me that Lister is not from a world like Mega City 1. Anyway, yeah, so we're meeting our crime boss friend for the first time in a while. And he's like, oh yeah, thanks for your help, but let's end it here. I've got a lot of money now for some reason. But yes, he offers us some drinks on the house for free. If that's not a warning sign, who knows what is. All right, let's launch. and we'll wrap it up. This will be the last moment. I guess finish with a big bang. Oh, it's Belantra again. She's found us here. You've been so good at helping me get promoted. I love this idea. She's gone from rookie to captain to um, Supreme Admiral of the Fleet, all in one day. And she keeps failing, but she keeps failing upwards. She's a little bit like Servalan from Blake Seven in that regard, who is just like a wonderful villain from that show. And so I did kind of like, can I do a little bit of a homage to Servalan because she's so awesome. But she's also a little bit like Darth Vader kind of thing. Belantra is, I mean. Yeah, so I think it's not going to go well for the person that betrayed us. Yeah, there we go. Alright, that is where we should end it. Now the game, that's like I reckon that's the halfway point in the plot, or maybe a third of the way. It's hard to say because the different missions take different times, and I'm still getting the balance right. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me here on Liberation. For the first, like, kind of not really a playthrough, like a talk through of just the stuff that I've loved about the game, making the game, and just kind of a sneak peek at it, because it's still under development. It launches soon. I mean, if you're watching this, it's probably launched, so you can support the game now by buying it. And let me know. And if you play it, if you come across balance issues, or there's things you want to see, like if you want to see like more ships or more types of ships, or there's a science fiction that you really love that you want to see in it, or you want like trading, or you want to be able to buy a space dock or whatever, those are the things that I would love to hear, because I've put in everything in the game that I felt is like necessary. But something that's great about Liberation being an indie dev is that you can continue to support the game in the future. Yeah, because I just love living my elite dream, just flying around, shooting stuff. But yeah, I guess we'll leave it there. Thank you all for joining me. As I said, please do consider purchasing the game or following me on Steam, following me on Mastodon, following me on whatever websites you can find. Talk to me about science fiction, and just don't just talk to me about oh, I really liked when in Survivors this happened. Let's talk like production, like Survivors, which we've only just mentioned now. Show from 1975, also by Terry Nation, one of the first dramas to film outdoors with videotape, with video cameras. They had 2 video cameras for the whole show. And by season 3, one of the video cameras was breaking, but they still had to use it. So like half the footage is like a green line down the side. It's sensational. So they lost quality in the footage, but it meant, because they were using video cameras instead of film, that they could do more rehearsal outdoors, they could do more scenes outdoors, and just give Survivors just this kind of energy that if you look at other dramas made at the same time, which are all done inside a studio, like Upstairs, Downstairs, there's nothing quite like Survivors. And also everyone working on that show, from what I can tell, kind of hated each other. I would love to talk to people about that. Talk to me about the production of Survivors, the making of Survivors. Talk to me about Starkovs. I want to know. All right, see you later. Yeah, bye.